We are looking here at the completion of the first adventure in the Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage adventure book. It's called Mopping Up, and I will say that there are a little spoilers here, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about the adventure. Mostly this video is going to be about the campaign nature of this game. This is only the second game of this series that I have played. I have Ravenloft, which is quite different in terms of the campaign nature, and then this one. At the end here, I will get into what the story was, but I just want to point out you get this big stack of money tokens, and every adventurer, and I was playing with 4, gets 200 gold pieces because of the way we completed the adventure. So I'm going to distribute them here, but as you are using these things to buy things, I think there's an excess of tokens in general in this game, I think, because they're filling up the sheets for the dungeon tiles with other things. So you have, just so many monster hit point tokens and health point tokens and things of this nature. At the end here, we can see we don't have a lot of damage. We got actually 3, I think, healing potions. Maybe I didn't shuffle that appropriately before I started. So we had healed up right before the end. And in this story, loosely speaking, well, not loosely speaking, I'll actually show you what the adventure is. So again, if you're not interested in seeing the adventure book, this is probably not the video to watch. I'm not going to go through the entire adventure book, but I am going to talk about the first one in a little detail and in the leveling up system in general. So for Adventure 1, we were told, following the mysterious pull that has led you here, you have arrived at the infamous tavern that serves as the entrance to the Undermountain, the Yawning Portal. Asking around, you hear that the barkeep Derman is offering a reward for anyone who will clear out a bandit gang known as the Undertakers, who have taken up residence in the dungeon. Recently, they dared to rob several of his patrons, and now he wants them gone. So your objective is to defeat 4 humans, and in order to do that, you are given a new action that you can take, which is a track bandit action. And what that will allow you to do is to take any 5 experience points that you get in the game that do not come from a human enemy and trade them in to place a human enemy somewhere in your space so that you can find them and defeat them. And now sometimes they will come up on their own. It's a little, I think I defeated 2 of them by bringing them in, and 2 of them just came up randomly. I was unable to tell whether that was an okay way of doing it, but I think that was, because the goal here clearly says that you need to defeat 4 humans, and I did defeat these 4 human veterans. The victory conditions and the defeat conditions are outlined, so you can continue to move ahead even in defeat, but obviously you will be gaining more if you win. And when I did, in addition, I didn't use any of my healing surges, so each of my party, as I mentioned, will get the 200 gold pieces, and basically then you get to go shopping. And it mentioned that we are started here in the Yawning Portal. There is a description here after the description of how to use the adventure book and how the adventures work. There is indication of how you upgrade, and basically it's going to be, the marketplace is going to change depending on where you entered for your adventure. So for the first 4 adventures, you are coming in through this Yawning Portal, and then thereafter through Skullport. In the marketplace, you can, as stated here, draw 4 treasure cards after each adventure, and you can purchase any or all of the item cards that you can afford to buy, and then you return the cards to the deck. It also lets you know that for 2,000 gold pieces, you can upgrade to level 2. And the marketplace also has these upgrades here, and they are indicated as such. I'll show you what they are. There's a reroll. The first reroll that you buy costs you 400 gold, and the first +1 damage that you can do costs 500 gold. And then there is a second reroll, but you can see it becomes more expensive. And there's also a regaining a hit points, another reroll. This one is for 600 gold. And finally, the last +1 damage is also 600 gold. So as you continue to buy the same thing, it's going to cost you more money. Now, I only have 600 gold, so my decision here really is to take the option of the +1 damage or the reroll, and assuming I want to spend it, which I do, I'm somewhat inclined to take the doing of the +1 damage, given what I've seen in terms of the health points, the hit points of the enemies. Of course, the enemies are going to change in the next scenario. And this brings us back to the adventure book. And again, if you're just tuning in now, to my caution that I'm going to be showing you some of the pages of the adventure book. Mopping up, the first adventure in the adventure book did feel very much as an introductory adventure might feel. It was a fairly simple setup, and at least in my playthrough of it, it ended pretty easily, and even without the healing potions that I received and used. Maybe I should have saved them for later, but even without that, I wouldn't have taken too much damage, and it didn't take too terribly long to play. But as you would expect, and again, we'll look through this a little bit, just briefly, not in detail, but turn away if you don't want to see anything. As you would expect, moving through Adventure 2, even starting with the Toll Bridge, I haven't read that, but you can just see the special adventure rules on there. It is going to increase in complexity throughout, and there are a total of 13 adventures that you can participate in, and the main rule book says quite clearly at the beginning here that this is the Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage board game is intended to be played as a campaign, although you can always play any adventure as a one-shot. And it explains to you how to support campaign play by separating out the starting deck cards that have the white set icon from the advanced deck. And what will happen as you move through the adventure, you will be seeding your deck and changing your deck a little bit to increase the complexity. So here at the end it tells you I need to remove from the treasure deck 1 pouch of copper and replace it with silver, so obviously that's better. And I am removing a monster and adding nothing, I guess. And I'm removing the respite encounter, which I'm not even sure I got to, and not replacing it with anything. So the cards are working to increase the complexity. Clearly you are meant to be purchasing things and upgrading yourself in this game, as opposed to, I don't know if it's every other one in the series. I think so. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but your characters can actually get to level 4. So there are upgrades not just to 2 levels for your characters, but 4, and I'll show you how that works. The main character cards will be familiar to you with the first level and then the second level side, but what comes here as well for each character is another token, and the other token has on one side the additional things that you get at the third level, which are comprised of some more hit points and an additional surge value, and the addition of some cards, some utility and expert powers, and then finally the fourth level, the highest level in this game, all the other benefits that you get here, and that's quite a lot. So what you're meant to do is to place this over this card as you level up, and that would represent the total attributes that you have of the 4th level player. And again, this is part of the campaign play that happens over the course of this game. And finally, I'll just give you a look here at the rules in the back of the rule book on playing the campaign. Again, it says we recommend playing through Adventures 1 to 13 in order with the same heroes. And it also explains to you what will happen if, for example, somebody didn't participate in a campaign. So you can, if you're playing not solo, say with friends dropping in or something, figure out how to get them involved in the game. It explains what happens if you fail an adventure. You may keep the treasure cards you gained, take town actions, and then try again, and what carries over and what does not. It also explains what the town actions are, so you can change out your powers that you have selected. And I know in my case, I'm definitely going to do that with one of my characters for sure, because I didn't like the selection I made. You can buy items. We already talked about some of that. You can also sell items, and there are, I didn't show you that, but on the treasure cards there are the costs to buy and the cost or the benefit you get from selling. So if you were really tracking the sale of something and some of them are, 1,600 gold or whatever, I guess you would be using all those gold tokens I saw, but I tend to probably do that through note taking. You can trade treasure cards and leveling up. We already showed you about that. There are different costs for leveling up, experience costs that you can use, and I showed you the advancement tokens, and they do differ depending on if you're in Skillport or the Yawning Portal. And that is what happens, and then you move along. They also give you, I'm not sure who would ever write in the book here, but they do give you some little indications here that you can keep track in the book if you wanted to of what your characters had. Obviously, I would do that not in the book myself, but you could certainly use what's given there. So it is really meant to be a campaign, and I think just in terms of solo play, my bias or my inclination as a solo player, and I've talked about this in the context of videos, other videos I've done with various dungeon crawls and games that allow for a campaign, is I tend not to play as a campaign. There are a variety of reasons for it. One is time. I'm not spending so much time sequentially on a game, and it can really take you out of the experience to stop playing the game and then come back to it 4 months later, kind of in the middle of something. And the other is that I tend to like when there are more characters available than just 4. I mean, this comes with 5, so you can choose 4. But there's really only 5 available. If I'm playing something, like Talisman or whatever, I want to play as many different characters as I possibly can, so I'm always sort of switching things around. In this game, however, I do plan to play it as a campaign, and I think for me, this, again, it's only my second game of this series, but it fills a spot in my gaming life that is a relatively light game, at least in terms of my tastes, and something that is just familiar because it plays on the tropes, obviously, of D&D itself, and while it's highly simplified, and I don't even think it feels so much like D&D, it does because D&D tropes themselves have become so pervasive in the dungeon crawl genre. It feels like the quintessential dungeon crawl. In this case, it's not too heavy. There isn't a lot of planning that goes into it. You are facing relatively somewhat similar monsters. They're going to be bringing the monsters in, I imagine, in a gradation form, but there's not a huge range of monsters. I didn't actually count how many, but let's see what we have here. So this is the figure reference sheet that you get, and just counting up the actual different monsters there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18, 19, 20. There's only 20 different monsters. So there's 20 different monsters that are going to be coming out in the context of the campaign. Now, there are some tokens. I don't know whether those represent other monsters, but in terms of the minis and things, there's only 20 different ones. Obviously, you can see just from the scaling here that there are going to be some that are much more challenging than others, and those are likely to come out later on. So there's some anticipation about that in terms of sequentially playing through the campaign. But the lightness of the game and the fact that it plays fairly quickly and is easy to remember and set up, at least for me, game to game, does make this very likely that I will commit to playing it as intended, which I rarely do, but playing it as intended, moving through. And I am now looking forward to, after I make my decision, I think I am going to spend my money on the increase of the 1 damage point. I'm not sure who I'm going to give that to yet. I elected not to play with the fighter, so I'm playing 4 characters without the fighter. I'm playing the paladin, the cleric, the sorcerer, and the rogue. So I have to figure out who I'm going to give that to, possibly the paladin. But it is it's doing its job in making me really interested into what happens next here in Tollbridge. And I'll just read you. I haven't read this myself. Having returned to the dungeon once again, you are tracking a pair of deadly zombie beholders that have moved into the area you need to journey through next. You'll have to get rid of them to continue your quest deeper into the mountain. So, clear objective, defeat the 2 zombie beholders. And then it tells you what the special adventure setup is. As it turns out, I pulled that underground river tile just randomly last time, so I'll need to be playing with that again. And so you're off. That's the underground river tile. And so we are off. So I hope you enjoyed this quick glance inside some of the campaign rules of this Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Thanks for watching.